Friends, I built a watch last night. Well, I built a couple. So last week's event where I had 6 builds in there, one selected, and then 3 were subsequently sold thereafter, which is probably the most that I've ever just sold, where you guys didn't win them, but you wanted them. So it knocked me down to 2. So we had to get 3 more in the mix. Here is one of those 3. So since the last one that was bought was one of the Piranhas, I ended up building the Piranha. I did a radioactive build, which I don't have all the pictures done on it, and then a World War II propeller build because I still have a Kraken available and that West 9. So don't have 6 to replace it, but we're back up to 5. So this is a copper distressed laser etched Piranha. This is one of my Piranhas. The ones that we've bought before, other than the one that was just bought, were designed for me. These were ones where we found the designs, lasered them out, distressed them ourselves, sometimes using Ager, sometimes just the laser doing it. This one is actually the laser doing it, so you'll see like little teeny things in there where just little laser distress marks where it didn't go all the way through on distressing the copper. So it just kind of gives it a cool look, and you can kind of see some laser lining in there. So just a kind of nice little look to it. But copper Piranha, this is done in a bead blasted 710 case. I don't do too many of these cases that often just because there's limited bezel options, because more often than not the aftermarket bezels that I use cover over the crown or run into the crown. Well, obviously we don't have to worry about that with this one, but you see that little gapping right there? That's a lot of times why I do it. That's a little tiny. There, I got it. See how you've got that right there? On the aftermarket bezels, what they do is they'll bring it up a little bit higher, but they'll come over, and a lot of times they're over to about here. The thing is, these case sizes are the same, but the way that they do the crowns, the stems are a little bit shorter, and where your crown head is kind of gets under these aftermarket bezels. So a lot of times I don't use this kind of case because of that. But this is one of your older vintage bezels. They came in, I don't know if they were, some form of PVD or where they use the magnetic field to kind of bond the plating on it, but these came as silver. And when you acid etch and you take hydrochloric acid, muriatic acid, and you put it on there and it tears them down, a lot of times you'll get kind of a copperish look and sometimes a pinkish hue because you are taking out another element. So a lot of times what I have to do to get that back is I have to sand and basically sand off that color distress, and it brings it back more to a brass color. But with this, obviously I did not do that, so kind of keeps it a nice kind of good copper tone, matches well with the leather on it. And I happen to have a distressed copper and black anchor crown for a 710 case. I don't know why I have it. I don't remember what I didn't do a long time ago, but I had this, and it's perfect because the only other crowns I have are silver, and they're not bead blasted silver. They're more of a polished silver, kind of like this. So milled case back. This has a stainless steel movement holder in there and one of my little signed or rotors, but this is a milled case back that we lasered. You can see it's a stock. I don't like to bead blast these very often because these are threads. It's basically an all thread tension ring, and then you get bead blast or bead particles inside there, and getting it out with air. When you hit it with air here, it just runs here and runs here. It's just like when you're trying to get water off your car and you use you're not using 5 blowers, you're using 1. It just pushes it around. So then you start grinding it in there. You could have it kind of falling down into the back of the movement. So a lot of times I try and stick with this if I can. And then nice comfy soft leather strap. Had a nice little integration of black in there. Did a bead blasted buckle on this. Black hand set with a little custom black seconds hand. But I think this thing came out awesome. Has a good like vintage look to it. So bead blasting kind of gives it that nice distressed look. I left distressing on this where whenever I was sanding it in a circle, I just did it a little bit. So you get the nice deep marks in there. I put some ager on it, which darkened it all up, and then I took some of the ager off in a few passes, and it left some of the ager on. So that's how it turned out, and I think it came out pretty freaking awesome. So if it's going to you, congrats. You got something that I was kind of building on the fly a little bit, and grab the best possible. I have so many straps I can kind of match it up to anything and come out. And when I was going through the crowns, I was like, I'll grab a black one because, you know, black anchor, that'll go good because the background's black, no big deal. And then I was like, what is this? How did we come across that? So there we are on it. But bezel on this will turn left, it'll turn right. It's held on with a tension ring. It's on there pretty decently tight for these vintage ones that don't have as good a quality on the spec of how they milled it. If you don't have a tension ring on it, you can put it on there and kind of move it a good like millimeter back and forth all around. So when I put the tension ring in there, the flat spots on the 8 sides, got to kind of bend it out a little bit so it's making good contact all around. Keeps it not only on, but where it's a little tough to kind of turn, you know, without, you know, one finger. If you really get in there, you can do it. But you kind of have to purposely move it. You won't really bump into it and move it unless you gouge into it and rip it a direction. So it's on there decently tight. Automatic mechanical, so you can wind it, wear it, put it in a watch winder. But if it's dead or you're not going to be very active, make sure you wind it just a little bit. And how you do it is you back the crown off the threads until you hear it and feel it clicking. At that point, you'll see that it's off the threads, but you can wind, and a wind is a turn that way. Turning it this way doesn't do anything, but it's a lot easier to keep your finger spacing and go back and forth. If you do this for 4 or 5 seconds before you put it on, even if you're not very active, you'll keep time throughout the day. And if you do it for something closer to 15 seconds, you're going to max out your 31-hour power reserve on it. You cannot overwind it, so don't worry about that. You can wind it all day if you like. When you're happy with your winding, you'll pull it to the 1 and only click. You can now set your time. It does not have a hacking movement, so it's going to keep going on you. You'll also notice you got a wobble crown. That deflects the lateral pressure from going into the stem and into the movement, so when you're pushing and prying on it, you're not putting any adverse pressure on that stem. It just kind of rolls with it a little bit. Okay, Google, what time is it?
It's 1:05 p.m.
I don't need any additional. When you're good, push it over, get it out of that time setting. And now you can just wind it down. And there's the watch, as I showed you before. Matching beads come with them. This will come in a Piranha box. This will come with watch cleaners. This is good on all glass and metal parts, so everything here in the center, non-toxic, non-residue, non-streaking. Will also come with some leather conditioner to keep this strap perfectly soft and pliable. If you ever feel that it's not, apply it on both sides, let it soak in, remove any excess. Use something more like a rag, like what you do on boots. Don't use your included microfiber. That's more for your watch cleaner or your fine scratch remover. This is Novus 2 from Amazon, just repackaged. It's like a poly watch. You've got an acrylic glass. You can scratch it. If you do, no big deal. Put a tiny bit of this on it. Buff it out using your included microfiber. If your scratch is up and down, go left and right, filling that scratch, haze it, and then buff it off. And if you don't do it, let it solidify a little bit, come back 5 minutes later, put it back on there, go back on there. You don't want to work it while it's still kind of wet, because if you filled in a crack, you don't want to be pulling it back out of there. It's kind of, you know, I'm trying to think when you can do that. Yeah, if you're working on a wall and you're spackling it and it doesn't dry and you go back and you add spackle to it, then you start pulling off spackle because it's attaching to the new spackle and ripping right back out of the hole. Kind of the same thing. But that's the build. like I said, if it's going to you, thank you so much for your support. I think this thing came out awesome, and I'm excited for whomever of you gets this. These are the ones that I like to build. I love those bezels, and I love when I can integrate it in with a dial. Most of the time I'm doing brass because they are brass bezels, but the chemicals that I use do often give them more of a copper tone than brass until I work on them. So to get that to match nicely was great. So thank you so much for your support. Also, I know a guy who makes, so that's copper. So I wear copper from time to time. How close is this in person? I mean, this is obviously polished and pretty, but I know a guy who makes actual copper stuff. So if you know, it's a little expensive. I think $40, and you know, with copper these days, a pound of copper is what, $2. So you know how much it weighs versus how much you pay for it is, you know, there's the art involved. But you know, if whomever gets this wants something like that, let me know. I'll look into getting you a bracelet. So that's the build. Thank you for your time. If you want me to build you something custom and unique, reach out. I'll see what I can do. And if you want to continue to see videos like this, like and subscribe so I put them up all the time. Thanks, guys.